So, I want you to picture a scenario.
Okay.
You are standing on the sidewalk, and you're looking up at a massive skyscraper.
Right.
Let's just say it's the headquarters of a global bank.
Sure.
Inside that building, there are servers processing trillions of dollars. They're holding the personal data of millions of people and basically managing the digital heartbeat of the entire economy.
It is an incredibly high-stakes environment.
Exactly. It really is. Now, imagine you were hired to walk into that building and answer one simple question.
Which is?
Is this place safe?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. But here is the catch. You have no map.
None.
You have no real book. You have absolutely no standard to measure anything against.
So you're just flying blind.
Totally blind. You just have your gut instincts. You walk into the server room, you look at all the blinking lights, and you just think, yeah, seems fine.
That is a terrifying thought, honestly.
Right.
But the wild part is that is exactly what the industry looked like in the sort of Wild West days of computing.
It's just people guessing.
Just people guessing.
Yeah.
Making it up as they go along.
And that is exactly why today, on the deep dive, we are tackling a document that effectively stops the digital world from collapsing into total chaos.
It's an important one.
It is. Now, it sounds incredibly dry on the cover. I will admit that right up front to you listening.
It really does.
We are unpacking the IT Audit Framework, or ITA, specifically the 5th edition.
Yes.
And we are treating this deep dive today like a Course 101 session. We're going to act as your instructors.
It is a pleasure to be here for this. And you are so right to set the scene exactly that way because, well, framework is one of those words that just makes people's eyes glaze over immediately.
No, absolutely.
But if you work in digital trust or security or governance, this document is essentially your constitution.
Your constitution. I love that. And that is exactly the vibe I got reading through the source material for this.
Yeah.
So our mission today, we are going to walk through Chapter 1, which is the introduction.
The bedrock of the whole thing.
Right. And this is published by ISACA. Now, for the uninitiated listening to this, ISACA isn't just, a publisher.
Right. No, not at all. ISAC is a massive global community.
How big are we talking?
We're talking about over 50 years of experience. They exist to equip individuals and enterprises, and they have something like 180,000 members worldwide.
180,000? That's like the population of a whole city.
It really is.
Yeah.
And these are people working in critical digital trust fields. So security, governance, assurance, risk, privacy.
Right.
So when an organization like that puts out a framework like ITIF, it carries the weight of that entire global collective brain.
So this isn't just some PDF that a guy wrote in a basement over the weekend.
Far from it. This is the distilled wisdom of thousands and thousands of professionals who have learned, and often learned the hard way, exactly what works and what doesn't work.
Which brings us to the hook for everyone listening.
Yeah.
Why does this framework matter to you? Why aren't we just, relying on smart people doing smart things? Why do we need a 50-page rulebook just to check if a computer is safe?
Because smart people disagree. They do. If you rely on gut instinct or just ad hoc checklists that someone threw together, you get total inconsistency.
I see.
One auditor might walk in and think a 6-character password is fine.
Seems okay to me.
Right. But then another auditor might demand 12 characters.
Right.
Without a framework like ITF, audit and assurance is just opinion.
Just opinion.
Exactly. And ITF transforms opinion into verification. It is the global language for IT assurance.
Okay, that makes sense.
It is how professionals ensure that digital systems are safe, compliant, and perhaps most importantly, that they are actually working the exact way they are supposed to work.
So our mission today as we go through this is to really walk through the structure of this framework.
Yes.
We need to understand the fundamental difference between what an auditor must do versus what they should do.
A very critical distinction.
And we'll see how this document essentially governs the entire profession. So let's start at the very beginning. Section 1.
Let's do it.
What exactly is ITF?
At its core, ITF is a comprehensive professional practices framework. It defines the standards, the guidelines, and the tools for IT audit and assurance.
Now, I noticed in the source text that it outlines 3 specific core functions.
It does.
And I want to break these down for you listening because they really seem to form the skeleton of the whole system.
They really do. The first core function is that it establishes standards.
Establishes standards, which kind of just sounds like making rules.
It is making rules, but it is deeper than that.
Yeah.
These standards address the roles and the responsibilities of the practitioner themselves.
Okay.
It covers ethics. It covers expected professional behavior, and it covers the knowledge and the skills required to actually do the job.
Right.
So it is fundamentally answering the question, who are you and how must you behave?
Okay, so that's the who.
Yes.
What is the second function?
The second function is that it defines terms. It creates a shared vocabulary
Now, why is that so important? I mean, can't we just use a regular dictionary?
in a technical field.
Yeah.
Ambiguity is incredibly dangerous.
How so?
Well, if I say a word like materiality or independence, or even a basic word like assurance, you and I need to mean the exact same thing when we use those words.
Right.
Because if I tell a board of directors that I'm providing reasonable assurance.
And they think that means an absolute guarantee.
Exactly. If they think it means 100%, absolute guarantee, we have a massive problem.
Yeah, very expensive problem.
Very. So ITF ensures that concepts specific to IT audit and assurance are universally understood across the board.
That makes a lot of sense. It prevents that sort of Tower of Babel problem happening in the server room.
Perfectly said. Yes.
So what's the third function?
The third function is providing guidance.
Guidance.
Yes, this is the practical side of things. It offers techniques for planning, for performing, and for reporting on engagements. It is essentially the roadmap for doing the actual work.
So who is this written for? Because I assume it's not for the casual tech enthusiast who just wants to secure their home Wi-Fi router?
No, definitely not. It is a primary source for IT audit and assurance practitioners.
The professionals.
The professionals. The goal is to help them perform audits and develop really effective reports. But, and this is a really key point for you listening, it is also highly valuable for the people being audited.
The victims.
We try not to call them victims.
Right.
We call them the auditees, or just management.
Management, sure.
But yes, if you are a CIO or if you're a board member, you want to know what the rules are.
Of course.
You want to understand the rigorous standards that these auditors are being held to, because it helps you understand that the auditor isn't just being difficult for the fun of it.
They're not just picking on you.
Exactly. They are following a strictly mandatory framework.
I noticed the text mentions digital trust quite a bit, too.
Yes.
It feels like the scope here has broadened way beyond just, checking computers.
It absolutely has.
Yeah.
ISACA has intentionally positioned this within the much broader context of digital trust.
Which includes what, exactly?
It includes information security, governance, risk management, and privacy. So ITAF applies to a truly massive range of engagements today.
Let's move to Section 2, the organization of the framework.
Okay.
Now, I am a total sucker for good organization, and I really love how structured this document is. It isn't just a flat bulleted list of rules.
Yeah.
The text describes it as having 3 interrelated components.
Right. I like to think of it as a hierarchy of authority, or maybe picture a pyramid.
Let's walk through those layers. What is at the very top of the pyramid?
At the top, the absolute bedrock, you have the standards.
The standards.
These are the musts. They are mandatory requirements.
Okay, let's pause there for a second, because mandatory is a very strong word.
It is.
If it is a standard, is there literally any wiggle room? Like, can I say, well, I didn't really feel like doing that part today?
Absolutely not. Deviations are not really an option here, not unless you want to violate the framework entirely and potentially lose your certification.
Wow.
If the standard says you must be independent, you must be independent. There is no such thing as being mostly independent.
Got it. So that is the iron law, the top of the pyramid.
Yes.
So what is the layer below that?
Below the standards, you have the guidelines.
Guidelines.
And these are the shoulds. They offer recommended practices.
Now, see, should sounds a lot like advice.
Right.
Like when someone says you should really eat more kale, I can totally ignore that if I want to. Can I just ignore a guideline?
You can, but it is not at all like ignoring dietary advice.
Okay.
In ITAF, should means it is the fully expected practice.
Oh, I see.
If you deviate from a guideline, you need a very, very good reason for doing so.
You can't just skip it.
No. You need to use sound professional judgment. And you usually need to thoroughly document your rationale for why you didn't follow it.
So you have to essentially prove why your alternative way was better.
Better. Exactly. Or at least prove why the guideline didn't apply to this specific situation. You definitely cannot just skip it out of laziness.
That makes sense. And what's the third layer at the bottom?
Tools and techniques. These are the how-tos.
The how-tos.
Yes, practical aids. Things like templates, checklists, and actual audit programs.
Now, I want to dig into why this specific three-tier structure exists.
Yeah.
Why not just make absolutely everything a standard? Why do we need this delicate balance of must and should?
Because the world of IT is incredibly diverse, and it changes so incredibly fast.
That's true.
If you made everything a rigid standard, the framework would become completely obsolete in about 6 months.
Because the technology changes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine if the framework had a mandatory standard that said you must check the floppy disk drive.
Right. Nobody even has those anymore. It'd be impossible to comply.
Exactly. So the standards focus on the high-level principles that do not change. Things like ethics, independence, competence.
The human elements almost.
Mostly, yes. While the guidelines and the tools allow for flexibility in how you apply those timeless principles to brand new technologies.
Like moving to the cloud or AI or blockchain.
Precisely. It allows rigidity exactly where you need it, like do not lie about your findings, and flexibility where it's appropriate, like here is the current best way to sample data for this very specific type of cloud database.
That is a brilliant way to structure it. It keeps the framework alive and relevant.
It really does.
Let's go deep into that top layer now, Section 3, the standards.
The mandatory layer.
Right. You mentioned these define the absolute minimum requirements.
They do. They cover the entire life cycle of the engagement. So independence, ethics, competence, planning, execution, evidence gathering, and finally reporting.
Now, the text breaks these down into 3 specific categories, and it uses series numbers. I think it's really helpful to walk through these numbers for you listening because they perfectly map out the auditor's journey.
They do.
The first one is the 1000 series, which are the general standards.
Right. The general standards are the foundation. They apply to absolutely all engagements, no exceptions. They focus on the fundamental principles.
What specifically are we talking about here in the 1000 series?
This is where we talk about ethics, independence, objectivity, due care, and competence.
Due care.
Yes. Notice anything interesting about that particular list of things?
Well, yeah, they all seem to be about the person doing the audit, not the actual job of auditing.
Bingo. The 1000 series dictates who you need to be as a professional.
Before you even start.
Before you even look at a single computer screen.
Yeah.
Before you interview a single manager. The 1000 series stops and asks, are you ethical? Are you unbiased? Do you actually possess the skills to know what you are doing?
It sets the character requirements for the auditor.
Exactly.
Okay, then we move to the next set, the 1200 series.
The performance standards.
Performance standards. So this moves from who you are to what you do.
That is exactly the shift. These define the rigorous requirements for actually conducting the work.
What's included there?
It covers the planning phases,
Yeah.
supervision of your team, defining the scoping of the audit, risk assessment, resource management, and of course the incredibly crucial process of gathering evidence.
Gathering evidence. So if the 1000 series is basically be a good professional, the 1200 series is do a good job.
That is a very great way to summarize it, yes.
Yeah.
It ensures you aren't just winging it when you actually start the testing phase. You have a plan, you assess the risks, and you gather solid proof.
Which brings us to the final set, the 1400 series.
The reporting standard.
Reporting standards, which
Yeah.
is all about how you communicate your results.
Yes, because think about it. You can be the most highly ethical person in the world, which satisfies the 1000 series.
Right.
And you can do the most thorough, brilliant testing imaginable, satisfying the 1200 series. But if your final reporting, the 1400 series, if that report is confusing or misleading or simply delivered too late to be useful,
The whole audit fails.
the entire audit fails. The work is useless.
So what does the 1400 series actually control to prevent that?
It specifies the acceptable report types, the communication methods, and exactly how information must be conveyed.
So there's no ambiguity.
Right. It ensures that when you write down, there's a high risk here, the person reading that report understands exactly what that risk actually is without any confusion.
It is a very logical flow when you lay it out like that.
It is.
Be the right person in the 1000 series, do the work correctly in the 1200 series, and tell the absolute truth about what you found in the 1400 series.
And sticking strictly to that flow is what ensures consistency across the entire global industry.
All right, let's unpack the second layer of the hierarchy now, the guidelines.
Section 4.
Yes, Section 4. The text specifically says that guidelines complement the standards.
They do. Remember our rule. If standards define what must be done, guidelines step in to explain how it can actually be applied in the real world.
The source material lists a few main purposes for these guidelines.
Yes. They help practitioners apply highly structured audit approaches. They help link massive enterprise-level initiatives with specific IT activities.
Which bridges the gap between the boardroom and the server room.
Exactly. And primarily, they exist to strengthen consistency and quality across all engagements.
But here is the catch, and the text is very, very specific about this.
What's that?
I cannot just use the guidelines on their own, right? Like, I can't just grab a how-to guide off the shelf and completely ignore the mandatory standards.
And no, you absolutely cannot. The text is very clear on this point.
Yeah.
All guidelines are to be used in conjunction with the related standards.
They're a package deal.
You cannot separate them. The guidelines only exist to support the standards. If you are following a guideline, it is solely because you are trying to meet the requirement of a mandatory standard.
Okay, moving on to Section 5, Tools and Techniques.
The bottom of our pyramid.
Right. This feels like the part where the rubber finally meets the road.
It is. This is the practical, everyday toolkit for the auditor. It includes all the templates, the checklists, the audit programs, and specific procedural examples.
The goal here, according to the text, is efficiency and comparability.
Efficiency is key. You really don't want every single auditor out there creating their own unique checklist from scratch every time they start a job.
That would take forever.
It wastes a massive amount of time, and it inevitably leads to errors or missteps.
Now, the source mentions some specific examples here. It explicitly calls out Performance Guideline 2208.
Yes, that is a very specific reference in the text. Strictly speaking, 2208 is a guideline, but the tools associated with it help practitioners with audit sampling.
Audit sampling. Let's talk about sampling for a second.
Sure.
Because that sounds incredibly boring to the average person, but it is actually critical, isn't it?
It is absolutely critical. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are auditing a major bank, and this bank processes 10 million individual transactions every single day.
Okay. Huge volume.
Huge. You physically cannot check every single one of those transactions
Yeah.
to see if they are valid. It's impossible.
Right.
So you have to take a sample. But the question becomes, how big of a sample? Do you check 10 items? Do you check 10,000 items?
Well, if I just pick 5 random transactions, that seems, kind of lazy.
Well, yeah, and indefensible, really. If you miss a massive fraud scheme just because you only checked 5 items, you are professionally negligent.
So how do you know what the right number is?
That is where ISAC provides specific resources, white papers, books, templates. These tools and techniques help auditors figure out the complex math.
So they don't have to guess.
Right. It answers the question, okay, if I have a population of 10 million transactions, exactly how many do I need to randomly check to be 95% sure that there is no systemic fraud happening?
Wow. So that is where the tools and techniques layer really saves the day. You don't have to derive the statistical math yourself on a whiteboard. You just use the accepted professional tools.
Exactly. It protects the auditor, and it ensures the audit itself is statistically valid and sound.
Okay, let's talk about Section 6. Using ITF in practice.
Getting into the real world.
Exactly. We've established all the structure, the standards, guidelines, tools. But what does this actually look like when you walk into the building?
The foundation here is that ITF sets the baseline principles for consistency, quality, and professionalism. The ultimate goal of using it is to deliver engagements that are objective, highly reliable, and fully aligned with what the enterprise is actually trying to achieve.
Now, the scope of application listed in the text is huge. I mean, it mentions everything from highly focused system reviews to massive, large-scale compliance audits.
It is broad. It applies regardless of the size or the scope of the audit.
Really?
Yes. Whether you are looking at a single, isolated security configuration on one firewall, or you are doing a massive, multi-year regulatory audit for a multinational bank, ITF applies.
The text specifically lists things like cybersecurity reviews, cloud assurance, third-party assurance.
And attestation engagements, yes.
Yeah, okay, attestation is one of those $10 words. Let's define that for you listening. What does that mean in plain English?
Attestation basically means you are putting your professional reputation on the line to say, yes, this specific thing is true.
It's a formal declaration.
Exactly. When a public company publishes its quarterly financial results, an auditor attests that those numbers are accurate.
They swear by it.
Right. And in IT, we might attest that a company's data security system meets a very specific government standard. We are putting our name on it.
I noticed a very specific point in this section about adherence regarding personnel.
Yes. All assignments must follow prescribed standards regarding personnel qualifications.
You can't just grab anyone off the street.
You can't just point to the newest IT intern and say, hey, go audit that mainframe. They have to be qualified.
And this leads to a really interesting distinction in the text between individual assignments and team assignments.
This is a crucial distinction to understand.
Break it down for us.
Okay, if it is an individual assignment, meaning a sole practitioner is doing the audit all by themselves.
Just one person.
Right, that one single person must possess all the necessary skills and all the necessary knowledge to complete every aspect of the engagement.
That sounds like you need to hire a unicorn. I mean,
Right.
someone who intimately knows accounting and coding and international law and cybersecurity.
It is a very tall order in modern IT. It is incredibly hard for one person to know everything at the depth required for modern audit.
So how does the team assignment work then?
For team assignments, the requirement shifts. The requirement is that the collective team must demonstrate all the appropriate skills.
Yeah, okay.
So you might bring in a database expert, a specialized cybersecurity expert, and a corporate governance expert, and they all work together.
So you basically assemble the Avengers of auditing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Individually, they might not know everything outside their niche, but collectively, as a team, they completely cover the necessary scope.
Which makes complex modern audits much more viable.
Completely viable, yes.
Now, we arrive at section 7.
Ah.
This, to me, is easily the most fascinating part of chapter 1.
The critical assumptions.
Your critical assumptions, yes.
This is essentially the go-no-go gauge for any engagement.
The text lists 5 critical assumptions. And these are things that are explicitly assumed to be true before an audit even begins.
Yes.
And if these aren't met, we have a problem.
A very significant problem. These are the absolute prerequisites. If these 5 things aren't present, you really shouldn't be starting the audit at all.
Let's go through them one by one, because each one feels like it has a real-world horror story behind it.
Well, they definitely do.
Number 1, identifiable subject matter.
The thing being audited must be clearly identifiable, and it must be auditable.
What does that mean in practice?
It means you can't audit the general vibe of the company.
Right.
You can't audit goodness. You need a specific system, a specific process, or a defined control set that can actually be measured against something.
So if a manager comes to you and says, hey, just go make sure my team is doing cool stuff, you have to say no.
You have to say, define cool stuff in a specific way that I can test. Otherwise, the audit is doomed from day one. You can't verify a feeling.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Number 2, probability of success.
Yes.
The text says the project must have a high probability of successful completion.
It does.
Now that sounds weirdly defensive to me. Why is that rule in there?
Oh, that rule is in there because of the scars of 1,000 auditors who came before us.
Tell me more about that.
Imagine a company hires you to audit their internal security,
Okay.
but the IT director absolutely hates you. He hates that you are there.
He feels threatened.
Exactly. So he won't give you any passwords, he won't answer your emails, he schedules critical meetings with you, and then cancels them at the last minute. He's actively stonewalling your entire team.
So you literally can't get the work done.
Right. Now, without this specific assumption built into the framework, you might feel professionally pressured to just You'd be forced to produce a garbage report just to say you finished.
Which helps no one.
Right. So ITF gives you the weapon to say, stop. The probability of success is now low due to a complete lack of management cooperation. I am pausing this engagement right now based on critical assumption number 2.
That is incredibly powerful. It's a built-in shield against being set up to fail by a hostile auditee.
Exactly. It protects the auditor's integrity.
Number 3, unbiased approach.
The methodology applied must be unbiased. I call this the witch hunt protection.
The witch hunt protection, how so?
Well, sometimes management hires an external auditor because they want to fire the CIO.
Oh, they have an ulterior motive.
Yes. They bring you in essentially as a corporate hitman. They say, go find absolutely everything wrong with Bob's department.
They don't want the actual truth. They just want ammunition to use against Bob.
Exactly. They want a highly biased audit. And ITF says, no, the approach must be objective and unbiased. You cannot go in looking to explicitly prove someone guilty. And on the flip side, you can't go in looking to whitewash a known problem.
You have to be a neutral observer.
A completely neutral observer.
Okay, number 4, sufficient scope.
The scope of the audit must be large enough to actually achieve the stated objectives. This prevents the classic don't look behind that curtain problem.
Explain that one.
If management says, we want you to thoroughly audit our network security, but you are not allowed to look at the external firewalls or the admin user logs.
That defeats the purpose.
Completely. The scope is insufficient. You physically cannot achieve the objective of auditing security with those absurd restrictions in place.
So you have to refuse the job.
You have to refuse the job as an audit. You absolutely cannot put your professional name on a report that says security is good if you weren't even allowed to check the locks on the front door.
And finally, number 5, objective reporting.
The resulting report must be objective, and it must not be misleading in any way.
Give me an example of how that gets violated.
Say you know in advance that you will be forced to hide your findings. Maybe the CEO pulls you aside and says, look, we can't report any critical security issues right now because it will tank our upcoming stock IPO.
Wow.
If you agree to that, the critical assumptions are violated. The report would be intentionally misleading.
So, practically speaking, if an auditor realizes that even one of these 5 assumptions is false, what actually happens?
They should immediately pause. These are the mandatory baseline assumptions under which all ITF assignments are conducted.
So if they aren't present?
If they aren't present, the engagement simply isn't an ITF-compliant audit. It might be a casual consulting gig, or it might just be a total waste of time, but it is definitely not an assurance engagement.
It really empowers the practitioner to just say no to bad engagements.
It does. It strictly upholds the integrity of the entire profession.
Let's move to Section 8, Standards versus Guidelines. Specifically, the text talks about terminology.
Yeah.
We touched on this briefly earlier, but the text is very specific about the exact key words. I like to call this the language of authority.
That's a good way to put it. Practitioners have to watch for these specific words. It is exactly like reading a binding legal contract.
For the standards, what is the magic word we are looking for?
Shall or must.
Shall or must.
If you see those exact words, the action is non-negotiable. It is mandatory.
And what if you literally can't do it?
Any deviation must be formally addressed and completely resolved before the completion of the audit. You cannot just skip a shall.
Give me a scenario.
If the standard clearly says you shall obtain written representation from management, and management point blank refuses to sign the paper, you have a major issue. You cannot issue the final report until that is resolved.
And for the guidelines, what's the word?
The word is should. These are considered non-mandatory.
But again, non-mandatory doesn't just mean optional if you don't feel like it today.
Correct. We discussed this. Should means it is the globally expected practice. Deviations require sound professional judgment. You need a documented rationale.
You have to write down your excuse, basically.
Yes. You might even need to seek additional guidance from peers. You have to explicitly explain why you didn't follow the guideline and demonstrate how you achieve the exact same objective using a different method.
Now, the text also mentions that there are other sources of guidance available.
Yes. ITAF doesn't exist in a total vacuum.
Where else can they look?
Practitioners can look to their colleagues. They can look to enterprise management. They can consult governance bodies like the internal audit committees, and of course, professional literature and white papers.
Okay, moving on to Section 9. This covers framework evolution and external standards.
Yeah.
I noticed something interesting in the text here. It mentions intentional gaps in the numbering system. We have the 1000 series, the 1200 series, and the 1400 series. Where on earth are 1100 and 1300?
Those gaps are entirely intentional. This is ISACA designing for the future.
Future-proofing.
Exactly. As new technology evolves, think about things like generative AI or quantum computing. ISACA can seamlessly insert brand new dedicated guidance into the framework without breaking the entire existing numbering system.
That's really smart.
It is.
Now, here is a tricky scenario the text addresses, and I want your take on it. What happens if ITAF directly conflicts with another standard? Say, a government regulation or another professional body's rules.
This is a very common real-world issue. You might be auditing a major bank that has to strictly follow federal banking regulations, and you're also trying to follow ITAF.
So who wins in a fight?
The baseline rule is this. If a practitioner explicitly cites ITAF compliance in their report, ITAF prevails.
But wait, what if the local law requires something else? You can't just ignore federal law because a framework told you to.
No, you can't. And the text provides a specific exception for this. If you are legally required to adhere to other standards for regulatory or legal purposes, you can use those other standards in conjunction with ITF.
Okay, so you don't throw ITF out the window.
No, you use both. But, and this is the critical key, you must explicitly cite the use of those other standards in your final report.
You have to be transparent.
You have to be completely transparent. You're right. We followed IT for this engagement, but for this specific data privacy section, we also followed European Regulation X.
That ensures the person reading the report knows exactly what yardstick was used to measure everything.
Exactly. Transparency is the ultimate currency of auditing. If you hide your yardstick, your measurement is worthless.
Very well said. Finally, Section 10, Terms, Definitions, and Ethics.
Yes.
We mentioned terms earlier. ITIA uses common English words, but assigns them very specific, rigid meanings.
Yes, these are formally defined in Appendix A of the document.
Why is that formal dictionary so important at the end of the day?
Because in the world of auditing, ambiguity is the ultimate enemy. We talked about this. If I say assurance and you hear insurance, we have a massive communication breakdown.
Right.
The framework locks these definitions down. However, the text does note an important caveat here.
Which is?
Practitioners should always consult the original source standards for specific types of engagements to ensure the definitions match perfectly for that specific context.
Right. Always double-check the source.
Yes.
And the final piece of Chapter 1, which really wraps this all up, is the Code of Professional Ethics.
This is the wrapper around the entire profession.
The text notes that failure to comply with this code can actually result in formal investigation and disciplinary measures.
It can. You can lose your standing.
It guides both professional and personal conduct.
Yes.
Now, personal conduct is really interesting to me. Does that mean what I think it means?
It means you cannot be a perfectly ethical auditor inside the office from 9 to 5 and then be a known fraudster outside of it. If your personal conduct brings the broader profession into disrepute, ISACA can and will revoke your certification.
So you represent the badge 24/7.
You do. It really emphasizes the point that this is a true profession, not just a job you clock in and out of.
Okay, let's take a breath and unpack all of this.
We covered a lot.
We have just sprinted through the entire introduction of ITF 5th edition, Chapter 1.
Yes, we did.
We've defined what the framework is. We looked at the hierarchy, the standards versus guidelines, we explained the numbering system, and we went deep into those critical assumptions required to even start an audit in the first place.
It is a lot of information to digest, but Chapter 1 really is the bedrock of everything else.
What's the main thing you want the listener to take away from this?
If you take only one thing away from this deep dive today, it is that IT audit isn't just about showing up and checking boxes on a clipboard.
Right.
It is a highly structured, rigorous professional discipline. It requires true independence, it requires a clearly defined scope, and it requires strict adherence to mandatory global standards.
It effectively transforms the statement, "I think the system is secure," into, "I have verified, based on rigorous global standards, that this system is secure."
Exactly. Verification over opinion. And now that the basic rules of the road are firmly established here in Chapter 1, the practitioner is finally ready to look at the specific general standards in the next chapter.
But, of course, that is a topic for another deep dive.
Indeed it is. Lots more to cover.
Before we sign off today, I want to leave you listening with a thought to chew on. Something we didn't explicitly read in the text, but it's where the industry is heading.
Okay.
We talked about professional judgment quite a bit today.
We did.
That ability to look at a guide should and decide as a human being if it actually applies to the situation.
Right.
But as AI begins to automate more and more of the routine audit process, what happens to that professional judgment?
Oh, that's a great question.
Does the should suddenly become a binary must just because an algorithm says so? Or does the human role become even more critical to interpret those weird gray areas that a machine can't understand?
That is the billion-dollar question for the next decade of auditing, honestly. As the tools get smarter and faster, the humans using them need to get significantly wiser.
A great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time.